Well, simple story, really. I was an old man. He was a dog. His name was Buck. And I'll tell you one thing for sure. He liked to
Adventure of a lifetime. He was sleeping for 2 days. In my bed.
So we have Call of the Wild. That's why I look mountain man enough right now. I don't have one of those open Henley shirts you'd see a lot. So this is me and mountain man. Anyway, again, I wanted to go see a film with the franchise, and that happened to be one that's based on an old book that I've never read, but surprisingly enough, he had. So we have the 2020 release of this, I don't want to use the word reimagining, but it's just like a film version of Call of the Wild done in modern day, but still with the same story. So my perspective is going to it in a purely film sense. His perspective, while also being film-based, is also impacted by the book that he read, and he remembered the story, so he was comparing notes the whole way. So this movie is directed by Chris Sanders, who it turns out has more than his fair share of experience directing animated films. He's been responsible for, where to begin? Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Lilo and Stitch. He has quite a filmography under his belt. So did I enjoy it overall? We were almost the only people in the theater. We were catching a late showing on Mardi Gras night, and we just figured we'd check it out because he kind of wanted to see it. I thought, why not? It's not bad, but it's not a particularly memorable film. It's shot and directed well enough. I don't have any complaints about any of that. I think that the use of a big CGI dog, and almost every single dog in this whole movie was CGI. I get why they did it. It made it a bit more on the side of fantasy, and it allowed you to have the dogs expressing certain humanistic emotions and qualities that otherwise you can't train that out of a dog. You can't get certain, like literally these dogs would make comical expressions on their face, which for a kid's movie, sure, I get, but I wasn't a huge fan of it. The CGI was just kind of distracting. Not to say that it didn't help make Buck endearing or anything, but I don't know. I've never been a fan of movies that heavily rely that much on CGI. I get why they did it, and it's a shortcut let them get away with a lot, but not a huge fan. I will say, I like how in terms of the cast, so they plastered Harrison Ford all through the trailers and through the posters and all that, as I'm almost positive is a way to help sell tickets and push this movie forward. That being said, I'm glad, now again, without having the context of the book, I'm glad they didn't really milk him, because he didn't really become a prominent character until, honestly, about halfway through the story, like toward the middle or the end of the second act. He was kind of like the third act of the story to then join with Buck, because the main character of this story is 100% Buck. It's about this dog and how he went from like a life of miscreant and luxury to moving forward and being kidnapped, and suddenly he's in the final frontier, I think in Alaska, something like that, and forced to be on a bobsled team where he learns the ideology of, it's not just me, it's the team, it's teamwork, and then ends up being separated again from that team and goes on to be with Harrison. I would say spoilers, but honestly, this movie's not like Endgame or something like that. There are going to be a bunch of fan theories online and a bunch of spoilers to be had. The book's been out for decades, so performances all seemed all right. I've seen Harrison Ford. I feel like he's been better in other stuff prior. The joke I kept making with franchise of the whole movie is that it was almost as if this movie was just camera crews sneaking up on Harrison Ford in his day-to-day life, because I could totally see Harrison going to the mountains just to try to live a life in some village somewhere with a big old beard and getting drunk every night. Like, I think that's just what this movie ended up being, was just the behind the scenes of just a camera crew following Harrison Ford around the mountains. From what the franchise told me, there are some key differences with the book that they shy away from for the sake of making it more streamlined and PG. Similar to how The Hunger Games, I read the first book, I saw the first movie, I left it at that, because after I saw how the first book gets very dark. And the movie, in some key scenes, especially toward the end, shies away from the dark subtext and just tries to give you some CGI thrills once more. I wasn't a fan of the film interpretations, so in a similar sense, from what franchise told me, Call of the Wild also does that, where there are darker things that happen and other narrative things that are involved in the story of the book that aren't translated and don't show up much in the movie. So I get why they would do it to make it more PG, but I feel like the narrative would suffer some when you may start to make a bunch of changes like that. I don't know. It worked for The Shining, but I don't know if it works for this too well. There were moments where I was actually kind of getting excited, or where I was like feeling for Buck and I was trying to get into the story, but one thing this film did lack was a sense of urgency, emotional depth, a certain narrative prowess that I prefer to see out of even animated films, where I want you to have me feel for these characters. I want to be invested and like hooked on. And this movie didn't drag me in like that. I was curious to see how it ended, but at no point did I ever feel like any of the characters were in mortal danger until, the other shoe drops and a character ends up becoming suddenly in mortal danger and dying toward the end and whatnot. So again, no sense in trying to hide spoilers or anything here, but if you really want to see it, you can check it out. I mean, that's all there is to it. But I'll review the film anyhow, and this one I really struggled with in terms of writing a review, and my initial gut response was to give it something lower. But after some consideration and putting a little bit of personal bias aside, I can recognize it for the quality behind what it is and what it set out to accomplish, and combine that with my own personal preferences. So for that reason, I'd say overall I give Call of the Wild and this is just barely makes this rating, but I give it a solid, I give it a very low 3 out of 5. I almost thought about giving it a 2, but I stopped myself. The CGI and lack of narrative depth was enough to almost drag it down to a 2. But then again, the fact that there were moments where it was lighthearted, it was fun, it was exciting here or there, it was entertaining to watch, and I never wanted to stop watching. I never wanted to walk out or leave the theater or anything like that. For the most part, it's just average. It's an average film. It's a good film. I wouldn't say go see it in theaters unless you're a huge fan of the book, or you absolutely just cream your jeans whenever you hear the words Harrison and Ford put together. If that's the case, then sure, go see it. It's probably going to be a good time for you, the family. The kids will like seeing the dogs on screen, but otherwise, it's more of a movie that I might maybe put on the background on Netflix if I had company over and we just needed something to have in the background, or just something to show if you have kids and you're, just want to watch a quick family movie with them. I would say that, because it's just about, an hour 30, hour 40, something like that. It's not going to be a film that I'll fondly recall by the end of the year. It's not going to stick with me for months after viewing. It's just an average film. It's not bad, but it's not particularly, it's not great. It's just a film. I would say if you're your average film consumer and you're looking for a really good film to go check out and spend your money on, maybe not Call of the Wild. But hell, there's a lot of other stuff playing, so check out other things in your local box office. So that's about all I have to say about it. Call of the Wild is based off the book, which from what I was told, it adheres fairly well, but not 100%, which I guess, what books can do that. That's my review of Call of the Wild. Thank you guys and gals so much for watching. Again, it's not one I would recommend really going out of your way to see, but, go check it out if you really want to. It's not going to make anywhere near my top 10 for the year, but leave it at a low, just barely 3 out of 5 average. Thank you guys and gals so much for watching. As always, if there's any films you want me to review, comment below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. If you agree or disagree, feel free to call me out in the comments as well. But otherwise, in the meantime, stay tuned for the next episode, whatever I do, or the next review that I put out. Thank you guys and gals, and goodbye. Goodbye, travelers. Is that like an old man voice? And a California gold.